Hello, government students. Today we're going to talk about state and local government, and this is sort of a introduction to lead us towards our unit on the Illinois State Constitution. So you'll see on the left picture, there's the Capitol building in Springfield, Illinois. And on the right-hand side, we have City Hall, where the seat of government for the city of Rockford is located. So let's start looking at state and local governments. So, first question is, why do we even have these things? What's the purpose of a state government when we have a national government? And it's really quite simple. First of all, history and tradition dictates that we will have the lower level provincial type governments. The United States started out as a loose confederation of 13 states. We started with 13 states, and we've grown from there, but we've continued to use states as our provinces. And so history and tradition is one reason that we have these lower levels of government like state government. In addition, it's more efficient. Local concerns are better addressed at a more local level. It's much easier for me to get a hold of my state representative or my state senator than it is for me to get a hold of the senator or representative that represents me in the national government in Washington, D.C. So it is more efficient. And, frankly, if I need to have something, if I have a complaint about the roads not getting plowed when we have a snowstorm, I'm not going to contact my U.S. representative to complain about that in Washington, D.C. I'll complain about that to a local representative who has, more of an ability to deal with the local concerns. And that's sort of related to the third point. It's easier for you and I, regular citizens, to become involved in our government when it's at a lower level. We have closer geographic proximity to those who are in the government, and there's fewer constituents demanding attention. A constituent is a person who is represented by a government official. So my state senator is Steve Stottleman, so I am a constituent of Steve Stottleman. So there's fewer constituents for Steve Stottleman to deal with than there would be for my U.S. Senator Dick Durbin to deal with. So let's look at some characteristics of state governments. First of all, every state, all 50 of them, have a constitution. We have, of course, a United States Constitution, but each state also has its own constitution. And a constitution is simply the fundamental law of the land, the fundamental law of the state. The U.S. Constitution is the fundamental law of the United States government. The Illinois Constitution is the fundamental law of the state of Illinois. Each state has a separation of powers, so governmental powers are separated among three branches. We have a legislative branch, which is typically bicameral. You might want to underline that word bicameral. Of course, the prefix in that word is bi, like in bicycle. Bicameral, that means we have two chambers. Cameral is a Latin term meaning chamber. We have two chambers, a Senate and a House of Representatives in the state government, just as we do in the national government. We also have an executive branch in the state governments. Typically in state government you have multiple elective offices in the executive branch. So the executive branch in Illinois would be our governor, our lieutenant governor, our attorney general, our secretary of state, our comptroller. There's lots of executive positions in the Illinois state government, all of which are directly elected by the people. And the third branch of power would be then the judicial branch. Each state has its own judges, its own courts. We have a national level of courts, and we also have state courts, a judicial branch. And these three branches then are all separate. We don't have executive and legislative and judicial functions all under the same control by one or a group of people. They're all separate branches, independent of each other. And the state governments also provide a framework for local government units. By local government units, I'm talking about things like town governments and even lower levels than that. The state government provides the rules that would apply towards the governance of local units like a town or a township or a county. Okay, so let's look at these different types of local governments. We began with state government, but now we're looking at local government. There's lots of different types of local government. We'll start with counties. In some states, a county might be called something different, like a parish or a borough, but they're the same thing. Counties, parishes, and boroughs are the same. In Illinois and most states, we call them counties. Counties provide mostly rural services. That would be things such as the infrastructure, the electrical grid, making sure that's all connected to, the houses and businesses in town, sewage, that sorts of things. Animal control, public health services, the regulation of hospitals and making sure that everyone is getting the vaccinations that they're supposed to get. Most of us, or many of us, have gotten the COVID vaccine. That's being managed by the Winnebago County Health Department, a county function. So these kinds of public health services are basically under the authority of the county government. County governments are also responsible for zoning regulations. Zoning, that means where we have areas that are zoned for residential purposes, areas that are zoned for commercial purposes, such as where the stores are, and areas that are zoned for industrial purposes. So you don't want to have a tire factory located right across the street from your house. That won't happen. The counties make sure that doesn't happen through zoning regulations. The counties are responsible for enforcing the state laws, typically outside of the city limit. You have the sheriff's department. That's a county function, the sheriff department, who enforces the laws outside of the city limit. Sheriffs can get involved within the city limits too, but that's typically held for the city's police department. The county is responsible for lower level courts. We have, of course, a county courthouse here in Winnebago County, and every county typically has its own courthouse managing the lower courts, traffic court and, some criminal courts as well. And then vital records and statistics. Vital records and statistics would be things like marriage licenses, birth certificates, death certificates. Those are handled through the county government. Keeping on with more county issues, the county government. The county government typically has a county board, and the county will be split up into districts, and each district will have a representative. And that county board does not have a separation of powers so much. Typically in a county board, it will have both the executive and legislative powers. Legislative powers meaning the power to make laws. Executive power is the power to enforce the laws. And typically each county will have a county board chairman who is the top public official of the county. Usually the county board will elect their own county board chairman. And there are a few counties that have no organized government at all. You might wonder why that would be the case. And that would be because some counties are simply so small, have such a small population that it really isn't that necessary, and the state will go ahead and take care of things that normally a county would do in areas where the county just doesn't have enough people to do it on their own. So here's a map of all the counties in the United States. I don't know how many there are, but I'm sure there's several thousand, I would guess. I grew up down in Texas, and I remember in Texas there were something like 264 counties there. Illinois got a lot. You can see how in some states the county geographically is quite small, especially in the eastern states. And as you get out west where there's fewer people, the geographic territory of the counties gets quite large. So, I'm not going to quiz you on this, but just a little trivia here. What do you suppose the largest county in the United States is? And by largest, I mean by population. And you might be tempted to say it would be the county that would have New York City, since that's our largest city, but that's not the largest county in the United States. And the reason is New York City is actually in 5 different counties. Manhattan is a county, Brooklyn is a county, the Queens is a county. All these, that city of New York its population is distributed among 5 different counties. The largest county in the United States is actually Los Angeles County, which has over 10 million people. That's a lot of people in a single county. The smallest county in the United States? Where might that be? Well, I'm going to go ahead and tell you. The smallest county is Loving County, Texas, with a whopping population of 64 people, and that's down significantly. In the 2010 census, I believe Loving County had a little over 100 people. I guess a couple of families moved away. Now they're down to just 64 people. And that picture there shows the former sheriff of Loving County. His name was honestly something like Billy Bob or something like that. Poor Sheriff Billy Bob did have to resign. He got into some legal trouble, and he had to resign about 7 or 8 years ago. I don't know who the sheriff there is anymore. Let's look at some other local governments. Townships. Townships are predominantly in the Northeast and the Midwest. We have townships here in Illinois. And the townships are typically responsible for the small rural roads, the little farm roads that you would have outside of the towns. They also deal with public aid. So if you lose your job and need to get unemployment compensation, that will be through a township government. They would also help out with things like food stamps. Townships are involved in tax collection. They're the ones who put an assessment on the value of your real estate, your real property, and then they will tax that property accordingly. That's a township function. And we have cities and municipalities. A city and a municipality are basically the same thing. When we think of a municipality, we typically are thinking of a relatively small town or small city. They're the same thing. And then the lowest form of local government is a special district. And in Illinois, we have 47,000 special districts, which are their own little governmental unit. Illinois has more special districts than any other state, and we'll get into the reason for that a little bit later. But we've got gobs of them, and I'll give you some examples of special districts. The Rockford Park District is its own little government entity. Winnebago County Forest Preserve District is its own little entity. The Rock River Water Reclamation District, another local government entity. All of these are their own, they have elective officials, and they're their own little function, own little government that are separate than the city or county government. So the Winnebago County Forest Preserve District is not a part of Winnebago County government. It's its own. So there's a whole bunch of those in Illinois. Here's a map of Winnebago County that shows all the townships in Winnebago County. Originally, townships were all 8 miles by 8 miles square. Over time, those district boundaries have changed, sometimes to follow river boundaries. This is the Sugar River up here that they decided made sense to make that the township boundary. Same thing up here. I'm not sure, some creek or something is the boundary up here. Rockford Township actually incorporated neighboring townships that used to be much smaller, but since Rockford, grew as a city, it made sense for the township itself to incorporate as much of the city of Rockford as possible. And here's the Boone County townships. Belvedere over here. The little asterisks represent the city of Belvedere. Up here we have the city of Poplar Grove. You can also see that Boone County has manipulated their township boundaries a little bit, so it's no longer 8 miles by 8 miles. And again, they have the freedom to do that with state approval. Okay. You have an assignment. You're going to find out a little bit about your local government leadership. So I want you to take a screenshot of this if you're watching this at home, or do whatever you need to do to go ahead and get this information for me. And I want you to upload the information, type it on a document, upload that if you're taking this and watching this from home. And you can upload it to Canvas. Those of you who are in the classroom, you can go ahead and just write it on a piece of paper. But here's your homework, and it shouldn't take you too terribly long to get this done. You're finding out what county you're in. You should know that, I'm sure. Who's the chairman of the county board, who's your county board representative, and then who is in charge of your township. You might have to do a little Googling and searching to find that township information. It's a little bit more difficult, but I'm pretty sure you can get it, especially if you know how to find your house on a map. So with that, we'll go ahead and close up this presentation, and y'all get started on this little homework assignment.